Hey everybody, what is going on? It's your boys, the33. Welcome back to another episode of the Anarchy Analysis Series Breakdown. Today we're covering the other semi-final between Suning and Top Esports. Now, this is a big episode as this is the final one before the grand finals this year. And we're going to be covering how Suning beat Top in this episode. But without further ado, let's get into game number one. DJ, let's start spinning up the tracks and get into our first draft. Welcome to game number one with Suning on red, TES on blue. And if I say a champion won once in this episode, I'll cover it basically once in full on the usage of the champion. Anyway, Camille's first ban out for TES here. And this makes a lot of sense. Camille being a very hard, heavy hitting top lane carry that just sets up a lot of plays with the hookshot, getting into the backline with your Hextech ultimatum. It's very easy to do as you can dodge out abilities with that tool, and you're also very good at bursting out targets. This is a huge champion that's going to be banned probably by TS every time they can on blue side. As a response from Suning is to ban out Lucian, so the big AD mid lane threat is no longer available for either team. So we're probably gonna see AP control mage champions in the mid lane, or even a TF or something along those lines, and then probably the AD junglers in this game. The response from TES is to ban out the Kindred, so they're essentially saying, hey, you've banned out the Lucian, meaning we can't go AP jungler per se, but we'll ban out the Kindred, the counter to the biggest AD threat in the jungle, the Graves. So Kindred being banned out, the marks will not be stacked up in game number one, and Syndra is the responsive ban from Suning, and that champion is actually really powerful in the current meta. The control mage uses the orbs effectively very well in pushing the opponents back in the early game. Then when it comes to team fighting, the scatter of the wheat being so powerful in just stunning up targets very easily. You don't have to be good at placing the balls, you just have to be good at landing a stun to then unleash the power of your ultimate and kill people off. Last ban coming for TES in this first phase is actually the Graves. So we're not seeing any of the big AD junglers that people have gone towards as the first pick, which I'm actually surprised. I would have thought TES would have banned something else, maybe the TF for themselves, and gone in with the first pick Graves, or force Suning to ban away the Graves themselves. That being said, the last ban from Suning in this first phase is the Nidalee, and that is kind of big. Obviously, now that the two big AD junglers are out of the pool, we're more than likely going to see an AP jungler for one of these two teams, and Nidalee being very powerful with the spears in the early game, it's going to be good to take her off of the field here by Suning. So smart adaptation by them in order to get a more favourable draft for themselves. Our first pick time, and it's the Jhin for TES here. They're putting priority on the ADC pool here. Makes sense, Jhin being very contested in the G2 Down 1 series. Obviously both teams wanted to pick, so allowing that one to be first picked by TES is huge, as the carry with the 4 shots in his gun and then the deadly flourish will probably allow some good setup for the team, as you can obviously get some good champions on TES side that can proc the deadly flourish stun. So in my opinion, TES get a very strong ADC. Usually a response in terms of ADCs is the Ashe or even a Senna, but with it being Suning, you expect them to put priority on the jungle pool, and they lock in for themselves the Lee Sin, SOFM's big jungle pick that he's known for. Obviously he builds quite a bit of different things to what normal Lee Sin players do, so this is why he's known for it, and it gets locked in. Obviously with SOFM's playstyle, he goes for this very farm heavy pick like Lee Sin, and it works out very well in setting up plays into late game because he can play it very cleanly. That being said, the next pickup for Suning is the Ezreal that's getting locked into respond to the Jhin, and that's kind of smart. Pick something very safe for your ADC. Jhin's going to be very oppressive, and especially combining it with possibly the set lock-in, it's a very strong pickup in my opinion for this Suning roster. And speaking of set, that is next lock-in for top. Set being kind of a flex, I guess you can say. It can go in the jungle for them, it can go in the mid lane, it can go in the top lane, and it can also be a support pick. It's very huge, and it doesn't give too many tails to Suning into how top want to play this game. Next lock-in for top to end out phase 1 is going to be the Orianna for themselves. So they lock in a very strong control mage into the mid lane. Granted, it's probably the best blind pickable one that was left available that cannot be hard countered too effectively, but Suning go towards this Azir, so Ori being a very strong control mage with the orb placements and the shockwaves, and you actually look at the rest of Suning's squad. Shockwave plus Facebreaker or Facebreaker plus Shockwave is a very powerful combo that TES have. You can also just stick the orb on top of the set and he showstoppers into the backline and then Shockwave, getting a massive amount of people. It's a very gruesome combo that TES have got for themselves right now. It's going to be quite hard for Suning to adapt, though they do go for the Azir so they can push away the set before he gets into the backline with the Emperor's Divide, as well as the fact that you kind of match the range that the orb that Ori has in terms of using your sand soldiers to kind of match distances. It's a very powerful champion. You build a lot of attack speed and do a lot of damage through AP tools. Second round of bans coming in now for each team, and we start with Suning removing picks from the support pool. Both teams have their supports up and available to pick. I guess you could say Set is still a flex to that role, but Suning ban out the Thresh. They're not expecting that pick to go to you, Ganja, in that bot lane, so Thresh being that very safe option in the bot lane, as you can throw out hooks, push people away with the Flay, and also pull people to safety with the Dark Passage. It's a very powerful champion that's kind of not been seen too much at Worlds this year, which is kind of sad, though it has been banned out considerably by most teams. Second ban in this phase is on the TES side of things. They ban out the most powerful support currently in the meta in Leona. This pick's been picked up quite a lot by older teams in this tourney, and it was used effectively by Sword Art in the other semi-final. And that is an interesting thing to say, because Leona has so much CC in the kit. You've got your Xerath Blade, you have the Shield of Daybreak, and then the Solar Flare, all providing a big stun and CC tools that just make this champion very oppressive. And I'm actually surprised that TES ban it, because they could have essentially picked it for themselves and provided a lot of strain. The last bans from these two teams is the Ornn and then the Bard. Ornn, very good in the top lane. I would say it's probably the best top laner if it's left available in this tourney, because you can just lock in this pick, build items in lane quite freely, and then just survive the damage. You've got a lot of carry potential. And I say carry potential because this guy does a lot of damage. He does truckloads, and you don't expect it from a tank. Why does he do this much? I don't know. Maybe Riot is thinking, hey, we'll make this champion do so much damage that we don't have to think about giving him more than one skin. Yeah, I'm still waiting on a second Ornn skin. I've got plans for that anyway. Last ban in this phase is the Bard. Obviously, a very good objective controlling champ. You use the Tempered Fate on objectives, make them invulnerable. You also gain vision if enemies are there. It's a very strong tool. Obviously, with the Ezreal being locked in for Suning, they can't exactly go with an Ashe who can have a hawk shots to do the exact same thing. So why not just take away the Bard that would be very strong? Ranged champion in the bot lane is very strong as a support pick. Anyway, So last phase in this Game 1 draft, we see the Rakan pick coming through for Suning. Obviously with TES banning out the Leona, there's no hard counter to this pick. And I love this adaptation by Suning because you go for a pick that's got a lot of engage with the battle dance, you've got the quickening, and you've also got shields for your team. It's a very strong pick that gets a lot of movement, especially combined with the Lee Sin. You can jump to Lee Sin as he's going in with his Sonic Wave. It's a good combination of champions, and one of which has to be respected and feared. That being said, TES kind of get the soft counter to Rakan with the Pantheon, which obviously hints to me that the set is going into the jungle. Pantheon being very strong in terms of having a point and click stun, and then a lot of damage in his kit through the spear throwing, and the ability to obviously travel across the map with his global of the Grand Starfall. He's a very powerful pick. It's why it's normally banned out by the teams, and usually the other team picks up Leona. It's why teams get this champion out of the Rift. It's a very good pick. Last pickup though for this TS squad is the Jace. Jace obviously hints and tells you that the set is going into the jungle, as Ori's in the mid lane and it's Pantheon support. But Jace obviously adding into the AD this TS squad has, which is very high in terms of damage. Jace, you've got a lot of burst and poke with your Q. You can obviously use the acceleration gate to give that a bit more power and speed. He's a very strong champion, one of which that we don't get to see too much because there's far better options in terms of carries. And considering the fact that he doesn't have really any CC other than his hammer swing, which is very, very situational, he doesn't get picked up too much. But this game he comes into the top lane and will hopefully try to push an advantage, especially up against a Wukong. I love this Wukong pick. This is probably the best pick for Bin in that top lane. Bin is known for a carry top lane picks. He doesn't play on much. Wukong versus AD champions, which, spoiler alert, the two champions he really has to be worried about is the Jace and the Set, two very AD heavy champions he gets bonus armor against. He's going to be hard to deal with, and it's why this pickup works so well, especially with the dive buddies of the Lee Sin and the Rakan. This Suning squad, in my opinion, has won out the draft in Game 1. You've got so much dive potential, and you do so much damage and resist all of, or most of the damage from this squad TES have drafted, that they realistically only have to fear the Ori as we load into game number 1, where we're going to be breaking down this crucial team fight. For our first play, I wanted to focus around this team fight around the Drake Pit, as top think they've caught out Rakan, who obviously does have the mobility to get away from this. Now, top with the numbers advantage, they're 5-man strong in the bot lane. Rakan is very low. They realistically think they've won this fight over the Drake Pit and can secure this Mountain Soul for themselves. But as Rakan picks up more health and top pull the Drake towards themselves, it's Suning thinking they can actually win this, especially when they secure the Drake for themselves. Jace gets caught off into the side hit by the first half of the Cyclone, and then poor positioning out of Jackie Love means he gets caught out. And I want to focus in on the positioning in this team fight by Suning. So we're going to take it back a few seconds to where we see the initial engage from these two teams. Now, Suning is split up into 3 different teams. You have 2 around the Drake Pit, which is the Ezreal and Lee Sin. You then have the Azir and Rakan in the middle, and then you have the Wukong coming round the side to get a flank in onto the Jace. As for TES, they're split off 4 and 1. Jace on his lonesome behind the wall of the Dragon Pit, and then the rest of TES approaching this dragon pit. Now, the way Suning have set up for this teamfight is very interesting because they allow themselves to pivot between positions, as the Rakan and the Azir are in the middle of the fight, as they are kind of the important people who can change the fight. And the reason I say that is because Rakan is the main engager and Azir is the main AP damage on this Suning squad, considering the fact that Wukong is AD. He's looking to pressure towards the Jace, and Azir and Rakan could quite easily join him. And then you have the Ezreal and Lee Sin, two heavy AD champions. You can have the Azir and Rakan join in and engage onto the 4 members of Suning, kind of evening out to a 4-1 versus 4-1 fight. And what we end up seeing is essentially this. Once the Lee Sin executes the Drake, the Rakan and the Azir go towards the 4 members of TS because the Wukong pushes Jace out of the fight. That makes this a 5 versus 4 for the moment, as Jace is unable to get with the rest of his team. TS managed to pick up the first kill of the fight onto the Rakan, but because the Wukong can just flash over the wall behind Jackie Loves Jin, it creates a very easy execute for Suning to pick off both the carries of top and then continue the fight, picking off member by member on TS side, leaving Jace alone to be chased down by SOFM's Lee Sin, giving the full team wipe for Suning and game number 1 in this series. Welcome to game number 2. Suning go to the blue side and TES go to the red side for this game, and some similar bans come through. The Lucian and the Camille bans first banned by both these teams once again. Next ban out is the Caitlyn from Suning, which is a change up to how they ban in game 1. That is a huge thing because the sieging potential this champion has is very powerful, and obviously you can kind of tell Suning don't want to go towards this if they're banning it out, and TES more than likely would because it is a very strong pick for them. And obviously Suning are putting priority on this Jhin pick, and as I say, Jhin has been very highly contested by everyone in this tournament, and Caitlyn is kind of one of those pseudo counters to him. Next ban is Nidalee coming out from top, and the Syndra's followed up by Suning, rounding out their ban phase. And the last ban is the Graves, so leaving open some big AD picks for both teams here in the jungle, as the first pick Jhin comes through for Suning, kind of the standard thing we'd expect through both teams that's had a lot of priority on this. Top though, they do the dirty, they take away the Lee Sin. This pick was used very well by Suning in game 1, and it's SOFM's big styling pick, and for it to be contested by both teams is actually very interesting. Top also alongside this get the Ezreal, so they're kind of taking Suning's draft from game number 1, like Suning has taken TES's first pick from game number 1. And here's the first change up for this series. It's a Zoe. Zoe coming through here is actually quite interesting as a blind pick mid, because you could go for something like the Orianna or even the Azir, and you do exceptionally well into the Zoe because Zoe is very predictable in her pathing, but Zoe also does have a lot of burst, so you measure out the predictability by burstability, and Zoe kind of outweighs the positioning by having a lot of burst. That being said, Suning locking alongside this to Kindred, so that kind of nullifies a little bit of Zoe's weak positioning tools and allows her to basically go aggressive as much as possible by you having the Lamb's Respite to keep her safe and effectively very, very healthy. The response though from top is the Orianna, so kind of expected overall because it does so well into Zoe because you can get very easy shockwaves. Entering our second ban phase now. Top still banning out the Thresh, that does not come through for either team. Yuumi is the new ban from Suning. They're not allowing the Yumi powerful bot lane, though Yumi has dropped down considerably in priority once the mana nerfs came through onto that E. She's still very powerful alongside Ezreal because you can just poke and harass the lane exceptionally well with the mobility Ez has. Alongside that ban is Top removing the Pantheon, so they're kind of saying, hey, we want the Leona to be our blind pick support here unless you ban it away, and I would expect Suning to ban it away, but instead we see the Vlad ban, and Vlad is a ban I guess makes some sense because it's a very strong pick for the top lane. 369 has shown some incredible strength on this pick in the Fnatic series, so you can see why Suning ban it away because it is a very powerful pick for them. Though, we immediately see Top go towards their support pool, picking themselves that Leona up. A lot of CC in that kit, and with the Pantheon being banned out, there isn't too many good counters into it. That being said, Suning have to finish out their draft in this turn, and they go with the Ornn for the top lane, providing that scaling to the team and being that very strong tanky assassin top lane pick. And we end out this draft for Suning with the Bard. We discussed it quite heavily about how good it is with objective control, and it is one of the stronger supports that can do well into Leona because you don't have to go very close to it. But TES end out their draft with the Gangplank, and I like this because you can kind of do a lot of work across map. You can match semi-global with global, as the Bard ult kind of can be used to chase down targets, or GP's ult can be used to protect them if you put the cannon barrage on top of the target hit by the invulnerability, and you can use an effective choke hold tool to nullify this sort of poke that the Zoe has, and you can combine it with the shockwave effectively and basically burst out this Suning squad. But as we load up into game number 2, I'd honestly say the draft was won here by TES. They got the favourable picks in terms of the support role, in terms of the top lane, in terms of the mid lane as well. But only time will tell as we load up into game number 2 who will actually win this game. Now, like what I did in the Down 1 series, I want to break down how you actually beat Suning. And probably the best way to put it is you need to punish SOFM. Now, SOFM plays in a very aggressive jungle, and as you see in this play right now, he's nowhere near his team, and he's immediately caught out, and he's forced to Lamb's Respite, but obviously Lee Sin can immediately kick him out, and there's the first execute in this fight, allowing TES to basically run down the rest of Suning without any issue, because SOFM is a jungler who will invade constantly. He'll look to steal camps, and yes, this is the late game. Suning are on soul point with 33 minutes in, and he's still looking to invade when it's not technically his part of the map, and that is a huge issue if you're Suning, as yes, it does win you games by having someone who's always aggressive, stealing away camps, getting CS advantages across the way. But it's not good when you're losing your base and losing the game off of your over-aggression. And that's essentially what we saw here in game number 2. TES capitalizing on SOFM's plays and how he likes to be very aggressive. And if you're Down 1 going into this grand finals, that's something you need to be doing. And what better way than securing vision around your buffs, securing vision around the jungle, and also technically invading for yourselves. If you're able to get him behind the SOFM into his jungle, keep him behind. That's sort of how you beat this Suning squad, and it's kind of what you realistically need to do in order to beat this lineup. We jump into game number 3. The score's tied 1-1. TES are on blue. Suning are on red, and what do you know? We're returning to game number 1 set of bans. The last time these two teams were on these respective sides. Now, top ban out the Camille, the Kindred and the Graves. Suning ban out the Lucian, the Syndra and Nidalee. So, very similar bans, so we could see the same sort of picks that we saw in game number 1 here. First pick, priority may change for these two teams, who knows, considering how it went in game number 1 for Suning, how well they did there. But as I say, TES could quite easily bounce back and get their second win in a row off of better execution than what they showed in game number 1. Now, I am filling time to allow myself to catch up with the video playing, but as I say, we can discuss this draft quite well, and priority is going to be put onto the Lee Sin by TES as that goes into their first pick. And that's an interesting first pick because this series so far has been based around this champion. Every time it's picked up, that team has won, and TES know this, so they go for this first pick with this kicking champion. So how do Suning respond? Well, they get some safe picks. They go with the Ezreal for themselves, alongside the Orianna returning into the game. This time it's not going to be in Knight's hand, it's going to be in Angel's. On top side of things, they go for a pick that was banned out in the last game. They go with Caitlyn, and Caitlyn obviously very high sieging potential in a champion that does a lot of damage. And as such, it does technically do a lot better into the Ezreal than what a Jhin would, because you can just use your ultimate, the Ace in the Hole, and get guaranteed damage onto the Ez if there is no one around him to protect him. And that is a very powerful tool to have on your team, especially combining that champion with the Lux. So you've got a very powerful wombo combo bot lane here, TES, as you can put the binding onto a target if you can land that. You put a trap from Caitlyn down, she gets one pocket of headshot, then she 90 caliber nets onto that same target and gets the second pocket of headshot. It's a very powerful combination that we've seen teams go for, and it usually is a Morg, but Lux has kind of rose back into the meta and is the one that teams go towards now because you get the extra burst of damage alongside an actual shield. Last pick of this phase is Suning going in on their support pick themselves. They go for Leona. This is a pick that goes very well with the Ezreal because you've got hard engage as well as safety in the Ezreal's kit. And it's a very nice champion going into a Caitlyn and a Lux, as you can go through the binding at least and land the Xerath Blade. But the only issue I have with this Leona instead of say a Bard is that Caitlyn can stop Leona coming near her with the trap line. That is a big thing you have to note. The traps will put this Leona in place. She will not travel any further with that Xerath Blade, and that is an interesting thing to note going in between these combinations. Second ban phase kicks off here with the Suning squad banning out mid laners. Azir is the pick that they remove. Not allowing that even matchup in that lane is going to be very interesting. And while there's picks like TF still available to create pressure across the map, that isn't the TES style of play. So, Suning remove one control mage from mid. So, what do top do? They ban themselves out a Jarvan. This is one of the bans that is quite interesting to me because Jarvan has kind of crept a little bit back into the meta. It's not a pick that we see too often, like one game in every 10 you may see a Jarvan, but Jarvan obviously has a lot of engage. You've got a lot of lockdown with the ultimate, the Cataclysm, and you can just place that down onto a champion, not allow him to escape. And that's the sort of style, because you combine that with the Leona's Solar Flare. You've got a big wombo combo combining as well with that Shockwave. Now, last ban to come through from either team is the Silas from the Suning side of things, so they could look here to lock in a TP champion for themselves. here, Suning, because Silas, obviously, the ability to hijack ults is very powerful, so not allowing that sort of pick coming through is a big thing if you're Suning, so removing that is a huge thing. On the side of TS though, they ban out the Ornn to end the drafting of the bans, and I don't know why I worded it like that, that's a bit weird, but Ornn, we've discussed before, and it's a very strong champion to say the least, and it's probably why it gets banned out here. So, last pick phase now, and we see the Shen coming through for Suning, so that's why you see the Silas banned out. Shen obviously has a global ult as a stand united, can get you between lanes very easily, protect your team, and considering the fact that you've got a lot of heavy CC champions on TES's side, Shen's going to have to do a lot of work to taunt them up and win the game. The response though is TES locking out their draft with an Echo and a Renekton. Echo is considered this soft counter / hard counter to Ori depending on how you play him. It's very strong in terms of how you can use your ultimate to basically get out of the damage that the shockwave can do and keep yourself alive. Whereas the Renekton is sort of a strong pick into the Shen because you can just out-duel him, and it's very, very powerful as a pick. However, TES and me just got baited, as the return of the River Shen has come through here for Suning. This is a big pick in my opinion, because Shen in the jungle is a pick that you've seen once or twice this year. G2 have done it in their finals against Fnatic in the first game, and TES did this in the LCS's semi-finals against Team Liquid, and the River Shen worked phenomenally. It's won a lot of games for them teams as a whole, and as you have to realise, Shen can do a lot of work in the jungle because you've got a decent clear, you can get between camps quite quickly with your dash of the taunt, and you also, realistically, you can be using that ultimate, the Stand United, a bit more effectively than what a top laner does, because top laners do tend to have to quabble with each other a lot, and it's very easy to cancel that ultimate if they have to go make a play in the bot lane, or they have to deal with their laner as they're engaging you while the rest of the game is being fought over. So having it in the jungle where you're a bit more free to move around and you're a bit more sneaky is a very powerful reason why this pick is so strong. And we haven't even discussed the Jax coming through for Suning here. Jax as a whole is a pick that needs to be feared. You've got the counter strike, you can deal with the Renekton very easily with that, and you've kind of baited the pick of the Renekton out here. Is the real counter to this Jax, I would say, is a Camille, because you can push away the Jax when he's counter striking to keep yourself alive and not stunned up. But as I say, Renekton into Jax is a favourable matchup for the Jax. Yes, you may get pushed around a bit early game, but once you hit level 6, you're going to do a lot of work and you're going to keep him behind very easily. And Renekton can't really do too much. And I love this draft coming out from Suning. Hands down, they have won this one here in terms of the draft. They've got a hard engage with the Leona. They've got safety and harassment from the Ori and the Ez. You've also got a Shen and a Jax to basically frontline for you and just kill. I love this draft from Suning. Top though, while they do have themselves some good carries, I still feel that they're not as strong as what Suning have drafted. Anyway, enough rambling on about how these drafts have gone. Let us get into game number 3, where we see who takes an advantage in this series and reaches series point. So for this, I want to discuss about what happens if you shut down SOFM. Well, you have to deal with the other carries. Bin doesn't play tank tops, he's a carry top laner, and what we're going to see in this clip is him outplaying this dive. Lee Sin goes through, dives, Q from Jax keeps him safe, because spoiler, he didn't use it, so he could jump back and play the safe play. And then he's doing the smart thing of TPing behind the enemy team. This means that there's now a pinch for Suning, and he immediately jumps in onto the carries of top. And what do you know? First one dies as Yujanja dies on that Lux. And then it's onto the top half of the fight. We see a trade between the Shen and Renekton. And then the rest of Suning just punishing TES, allowing themselves, with the numbers advantage, to 3v5 to turn to the Ocean Drake, pick up Soul for themselves, and then turn and burn to the Baron and pick that one up for themselves and win this third game of the series. And it's interesting to note here that TES were playing very aggressive in this game and did very well, but Suning, Jax just got fed, and Suning are this sort of squad that can surprise you in drafts, as we saw right here, the River Shen just baiting top into this kind of bad situation, and that means that it's a very easy time for Suning to win. As we watch this fight again, we can watch how the Jax plays this. So he stuns up the Echo. The landing of the Q from Sonic Wave from Lee Sin allows him to Dragon Kick him back, but obviously the Q from the Jax takes him back to the Lee Sin and can stun him under the turret, picking up the first kill of the fight. Then you TP behind this top squad retreating onto the minion wave that you pushed up. He can just pop the counter strike, jump onto a carry of top, and execute them off for the team. And that is why we have to commend Bin and his carry tops. And when we go into this grand finals, it's Bin versus Noguri, two carry heavy top laners. It's going to be a very interesting matchup to see, and one of which that we've got a lot of expectation going into for. We have reached our final game, with Suning taking to the blue side, TES to the red, and we see the return of the Lucian ban, the Camille ban, the Nidalee ban, the Syndra ban. New bans coming through for both teams here is the Caitlyn ban for Suning, moving that off the field, and the Azir ban from TES. Now, overall, these bans have stayed relatively the same because the power picks have been obviously neutralized by both teams, and as a whole you expect to see them banned out quite a lot. Coming into the Down 1 series, I expect the Lucian, Syndra and the Camille and the Nidalee to be banned out by both teams in the grand finals quite a few times, and fingers crossed the grand finals isn't just a stale back and forth series. We get 5 explosive games, but I can only say so much about that series while we're still focusing in on the last game of this best of 5. And interesting to note, we've still got big picks up and available to both teams, the Braves and the Kindred. So we may see a shaking of the hands on the jungle picks by these two teams. And we get into our first pick for Suning being the Ezreal. They're going in with this safe pick that they've used in the past 2 games for themselves, and it's done work for them. It's very good at poking them down. It's played very, very safe, and it's been a pick that TS might struggle against because safety in the bot lane is a hard thing to deal with, especially if you want to go very aggressive with your own pick. Now, top go in with their jungle and mid lane picks in their first round of lock-ins. They go with the Orianna, which is very strong, and pairing it up with the first time in this series we're going to see it, the Graves. Graves very good in the jungle because you've got that shotgun that can do a lot of damage. Clear rate is very good. You've got a strong carry game into the late game and you do tons of damage. That being said, the response from Suning is to go with the Leona, so they've completed their bot lane, which is actually really good for them, so you've got a lot of CC to lock up this Graves and Orianna, and they've paired it with Spoiler Alert, a very aggressive mid laner that makes this matchup hell if you're an Ori, because you're going to be having to deal with a dashing around Akali, who, while It's very weak until she gets her Gunblade. Once she gets that, she comes online and she can just decimate a team. And that is something you have to be worried about if you are top, because Akali's do work. They can execute you off quite quickly. However, going into an Ornn, yeah, Akali will have a bit of an issue basically bursting out that champion. And the good thing about Akali though is it's a flex pick, but as I say, Ornn can just tank up, carry his team through to the late game. As we get into our second round of band, GP being first from TES being moved on the field, so that blind pick on top is not going to come through to respond to the Ornn. Senna is going to be the ban from Suning. Ashe, I would have thought, would have been a better ban here to go for Suning, because Ashe can just slow down targets very easily. But the scaling that Senna has is an issue, so I guess that's why Suning bans that out. Last ban for top is going to be Shen. They don't want the River Shen coming back and haunting them, though it isn't as powerful in this game because Suning are on the blue side and it's into their second round if they were to pick this up, but obviously they'd show both picks, so it doesn't make sense for the River Shen to come through if you are Suning. As for the last pick, or last ban in this phase, this is Jin. Actually surprised this has slipped through the draft to this second ban phase. I would have thought one of these two teams would pick that up before he got to here. Now, last round of picks coming through here. TES reply with the Ashe pick that I was hinting towards them going towards here. So obviously Suning probably baited or wanting top to pick the Ashe here. And Ashe has a lot of slows in the kit, pick potential with the Enchanted Crystal Arrow, obviously into a Ezreal who can just Arcane Shift away. The Enchanted Crystal Arrow isn't too strong, but obviously if you can throw it at another laner, say whoever goes into the top lane, then maybe TES can win this game. That being said, what we see coming through for Suning is the return of Jax. That big pick that absolutely decimated the last game, returning to this Suning lineup, and it's going to have an even better time in that top lane. Going into an Ornn, it's going to be hard for anyone to do much, especially when the counter strike can come up from the Jax to nullify grasp gainage for this Ornn. And last pickup for this game on the Suning side is the Jarvan, and that is a big surprise to me because Jarvan, we've discussed a bit earlier, it's still quite good alongside Leona, but it does provide a bit of ease for the Akali and the Jax technically, because Jax can jump into the Cataclysm and basically be a monster in the fight, as well as the Akali can just perfectly execute through it. Now, last pick that we need to discuss in this entire game is the Tahm Kench, and I don't know if this will be in a Hail of Blades Tahm Kench, but Tahm Kench provides a safety that you need, and this is good into the Jarvan because you can heat up a teammate so they're not locked into the Cataclysm, as well as you can protect yourself from the Akali execute. Now, I would say in this game, it's coming down to how these two teams actually utilize their drafts, as I don't think there's an out-and-out winner in this phase. However, I would honestly say, looking at how these two teams have gone throughout this game and this series, I'd say it favours Suning, and considering I've already said that Suning won this game earlier in this kind of rampage through this draft, we've only got one thing left to do, and that is load up into the Rift for our fourth and final game in this best of 5 series of Suning versus Top Esports. For our fourth and final play, I want to focus in on this bot side and the early game from Suning. They have the ability to create early game aggression from SOFM's sort of playstyle, and what we see here is this Leona going very aggressive onto Tahm Kench, who is very weak early. Obviously you need to burst out his flash, and then he's unable to save his carry, meaning that it's an easy first blood over to Su Ning. Now the TPs and the roam downs come in from these two squads, and we get an absolute bloodbath. Jarvan being chased down and tried to be killed off by the Graves, but obviously great positioning out of this Ezreal means that the Graves cannot get really any of his shots onto Jarvan. He's lucky to get the last shot off with the end of the line to kill him off, but that is 3 kills over to this Su Ning squad, 2 of which went onto an Ezreal, and you can kind of see what Su Ning can do with this advantage. When Su Ning get going early, they're very hard to stop, and when you're Damwon squad who wants to set up late and play 5v5, these sorts of plays in lane are going to be hard to deal with, especially when you've got a jungler who plays very aggressive, who will steal your camps and put you behind very early. And what we see here is just a massacre. You sacrifice your carry, it means that you have no real damage in the bot lane, and then it's just an Ezreal using his flash, using his positioning, protecting his Jarvan as long as possible so that he can actually secure a kill and or try and save the Jarvan's life. But obviously that doesn't come through, and Su Ning get 3 kills to 1. They win this 4th game and advance to the grand finals, where we're going to have a very interesting show between Damwon and Su Ning, one at which we still need to predict. Now, my predictions video will be coming out on Friday after this episode, obviously, of the Anarchy Analysis series breakdown. That being said, if you have enjoyed this entire series breakdown, leave a like down below. Subscribe if you're new around here if you want to. And I will see you guys tomorrow for my grand finals predictions. Peace out.